Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And today, oh my goodness, I have another special guest. Her name is Rhonda Clemente. Rhonda has her HR certification. She has a GPHR. She also has her SHRM-SCP, and she's the Director of Service Operations at Insperity. And I am so excited to have you on the show. Hey, Rhonda, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
You know, I always start the show reflecting on when I met my guests, how they came into my path if we hadn't actually met. And for you, it's been through Dallas HR. You serve as a volunteer leader for HR Southwest. And we recently saw each other in person at the Dallas HR Stars Gala back in February. Wasn't that a great event?
That was great. Yeah, it was a really nice event.
I always love everybody like getting dressed up. I mean, it was a magical night. And one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on the show today is because you were given an award at the show. You were presented as the Human Resources Executive of the Year for a large company. Man, how exciting was that?
It was very exciting. I was, very honored, first of all, just to be nominated amongst, so many wonderful people, and clearly surprised that I won. But it was such a great night. It's so, like you said, it was such an awesome event to be able to see so many people and see the people that you run into, celebrated for what they do all year. So, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't that feel good? Like whenever you go up, of course, yes. I mean, I can feel you're just so grateful. But just everybody like standing up, cheering you on. That's what I love about Dallas HR, the HR Southwest Conference. It becomes family more than anything. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your organization. I want to talk about leadership. But I do want to ask you what is that? Like, what does that mean to you? As you okay, you got your award, you celebrated with everyone. What a fun night that was. But then you go home and you reflect. I'm just curious, like any thoughts around like, what does that mean to be recognized as an executive of the year?
My reflection was really interesting. It was not just about what I had contributed in that last year. I thought about my whole career, and I thought about the teams that I've led. And it was a really good time to say, of course, what you do is not for the recognition, or it shouldn't be for the recognition. It was an honor to be recognized, but I really did think about all of the amazing teams that I've been able to be a part of. And 2020 was a crazy year for so many reasons. And I did think about, wow, over my career, all of the skills that I have been able to gain, all the people that I have met and have mentored me throughout the years. And then, being able to put all of that into practice in 2020 was really, really exciting. And so I felt really thankful for the award, but it was a reward for all of the people that I work with.
I love that. I love that. You can go to, I believe you can go to dallashr.org and go to HR Stars, and you can see all the different people that were recognized during the event. I know that there was also Cherie, I believe it's Bortrager. She was Executive of the Year for small company. And then also Karen Rodriguez for medium-sized company, and then of course you for a large company. And so, wow, what a night that was! And I will put the link in the show notes for others to check that out. Hey, I always like to ask guests on the show to just kind of give a highlight of their organization, and so tell us a little bit about Insperity. Like, who is Insperity, and how do you serve your customers?
No, that's a great question. Insperity is a PEO, a professional employer organization, and we offer HR services, payroll administration, benefits, compliance to our clients. It's exciting because it's a variety of industries. It's a variety of clients that we get to work with. in various cycles of their business cycle. It's a lot of fun. There's not a dull moment. And so we, what we really do take pride in is being able to take away some of the administrative burden and complexities of, compliance and things like that, so that business leaders can truly focus on what they're good at, and that's running their business.
I love that. I love that. I'll also put a link to the Insperity in the show notes so people can check that out. Hey, let's get started on here. I would love to. So I've known you through Dallas HR, but I don't know if I know the Rhonda Clemente story. Share your story. Like, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership?
I grew up in Colorado. Born and raised in Colorado. I went to high school there, went to college there. And my first job out of college, I was really fortunate to be able to go directly into a leadership role. I say fortunate and scary. And so I was a field consultant, which basically is a district manager for 7-Eleven franchise owners.
Mm-hmm.
And that role was like, a big eye opener in terms of taking what you've learned in school, your education, and putting it in practice, an environment where, I'm responsible for business owners and giving them best practices and influencing them on their P&L. And so I was a young leader, which, there was a huge growth curve for me in that role, but learned a lot and had a lot of fun.
What brought you to Texas?
That's a great question. My father is from Texas. He was from East Texas. So we spent all of our summers as kids here in Texas. But like I said, I was born and raised in Colorado. My first job here was with Blockbuster Video. And that was in the early 2000s.
Blockbuster Video. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, they were so big, and now all of a sudden they're no more.
It was during the time, the really fun heyday time. So I started as a district manager and a regional director. I was in Colorado still, and I actually transitioned into an HR role with Blockbuster Video. Their headquarters was here in Dallas, and so I moved here in one of my first director roles in HR. And so stayed here for a couple of years, moved back to Colorado, back and forth. So ultimately it was the job that brought me here to Texas.
I love Colorado. My son and daughter-in-law live in Denver, and we just came back from snow skiing, had such a great time. When you said Blockbuster Video, I was thinking about the book we're reading right now in our climb group, Reset. And Johnny C. Taylor Jr., of course, we all know, is the CEO of SHRM. He was leader at Blockbuster.
Yes.
And he was talking about those fun times, right? The times where you were growing like crazy. And he kind of told the story about that. And so, wow, what a journey. Hey, let me ask you a question, because you immediately, you were immediately in, started out in leadership, in Colorado with 7-Eleven. Was there now look at you, you're doing some great things at Inspirity. You're further in your career. Was there a moment when you found your lane, right? You found, hey, I love HR. This is what I was born to do. Any moments that stand out?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I started my career off as in operations as a multi-unit leader, primarily in retail.
Yeah.
And love that. I love building teams and looking after the operations, the business operations. I think most of my success as a business operator was through my people. And so I kind of gravitated to the HR skills, if you will, as a business operator, training and developing and hiring the right people and, all of those things. And so I kind of put my toe in the water at Blockbuster in HR and said, do I really like, and I loved it. I loved the function. And again, I didn't have the formal training or foundation. I was an operator. And
Yeah.
so I quickly joined SHRM and Dallas HR and attended every kind of conference I could to get that foundation so that I could, at least lead from that space. Interestingly enough, I went back to be an operator. It's like a pool for me to go back and forth between HR and operations. And I tell that story because the question you ask is, when did I find that I, kind of found my lane? When I look back on my career, I really truly feel like it's been a bounce back and forth between HR and operations, but it's really served me well in HR. And I get to do that here in Insperity. And so when I think about the positions I've had throughout my career, I've learned a lot on both sides of them, but here in Insperity, I get to mirror the two. I get to be in that HR space, but also connect with business owners to be able to drive their business. So for me, it's where I am today.
I love that. I had Camille Tate. She's a talent acquisition leader for Strava. She talked about purpose being fluid, right? She found her lane, but then she found another lane later in her career, and then she found another lane. It reminds me of a funny thing. We both know Letty Yanez, and she said, "Bruce, you need to stay in your lane." And I just thought it was so funny how she said that, but you're right. We can be in this one lane and then we shift over to another lane. It's like, I love this, but I can serve both lanes in this particular calling. That's like for me in relocation, I can help companies relocate their talent, but yet because I've immersed myself into the HR community, I've learned about other things going on. And now all of a sudden I can serve in a lot of different ways.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. I love that. Hey, let me ask you this. As you've gone on your career, I always like to ask, and it seems to me that, great leaders you've had mentors in their life. I was curious, have you had any mentors that have helped you get to where you are today? And if you did, what was it about them that helped you?
I don't think anybody makes it alone. So let me just say that, right? And in terms of mentorship, though, as much as I love the concept of, a formal mentor program, I actually never have been a part of a formal mentor program, but I can think of lots of people throughout my career that have mentored me and helped shape, who I am as a leader, and also helped me get to, kind of the next step, even when I didn't know that I wanted to get to the next step. So they were pushing me, because they saw something in me that I may not have seen in myself. I think about the first, when people think about, who's the best boss that you've ever had. Early in my career at 7-Eleven, and I was on the East Coast then, I was in New Jersey at that time. And I think I shared earlier, one of my first roles was a district manager. And I was really coming out of college, not really confident in my leadership ability, really, young female on the East Coast, and I came from Colorado. So there was a lot of things that were keeping me a little off balance. And I had a leader at that time who has served to be a really great mentor to me, not only in that role, but other roles. And really, she gave me that confidence. She showed me, how to engage, how to build relationships. It's not just what because when you come out of college, oftentimes you think, you know everything and you want to spew all the things that but it was really about leading without authority, being able to build those relationships, using data to influence and things like that. So I think her name is Eileen Terry. And she was my first manager out of college. I also think about a really, really good friend of mine, Tressa Bowers. She was my first HR manager, and I was in an operations position. And I always looked at, what she was doing and how she was managing behind the scenes. And I think I had a desire of HR, interest in HR then, just based on how she modeled that role. And interestingly enough, she and I became really, really good friends, even though I stayed in operations. And it's been 30 years and she's one of my best friends.
I love that. And by the way, I get so much out of these podcasts. I know the listeners right now have their pens out, they're taking notes, but I want everybody to write this down. Leading without authority. I just love that, Rhonda, how you frame that up. That is absolutely so good. Shout out to Eileen and Tressa for just what the good work they've done. That is so good. I love that. Well, let's talk leadership. Here we are, 2022, and you talked about, yes, 2020. Wow, the last 2 years have just been really rough. One of the things that I like to ask my guests on the show is, if someone said, "Hey, Rhonda, hey, what's leadership to you?" How would you respond to that?
And there's so many books on leadership, right? But for me, I just like to keep it basic. I think leadership is about the ability to influence, to guide, and to lead people, right? So you've got to have a vision. And then how do you get people to follow that vision? So it's really, really simple, but it's complex, right? We make it really, really complex. And I think about that now in terms of my own leadership. And I think I've always been in a leadership role. I think about, being an 8-year-old in kind of like a club, like the Brownies. And I was the treasurer, I was the president, but I also think leadership is a journey too, right? So think about that 8-year-old. I think about me being my senior class president in high school. I think about, my early leadership career, and I think about where I am now. And it's a journey, right? As much as you want to say, I've got it, I'm a good leader, there's always more to learn. There's always more to grow. And just when you think you've landed on who you are, if you're open to it, there's ways that you can improve, ways that you can be better, and ways that you can be more effective.
I really love that. And by the way, you were the class president.
I was.
That's fantastic.
I was.
Oh my goodness. I was reading a quote the other day, and it talked about just leaders think whenever they get to the top of the mountain, they actually think they're at the bottom of the next mountain. Right.
So true. I love that.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. So it just kind of, I always like to just not look back, but just peek back, and as we move forward, any silver linings from the last couple of years that you find yourself that's helped make you a better leader?
I think just constantly, I love that quote that you just said. I mean, because that's truly how I think about leadership is, you're always growing. And just when you think that you've got it, it's like, wow, there's a lot more that I can learn and grow from. But in terms of the last several years, I think, and you probably heard this a lot, is being able to pivot and being agile. That's been really like paramount in these last couple of years, is not being stuck on one thing, because you've got to be able to be nimble and think about things differently and be innovative. And that doesn't come real easy for me. Like the innovation, I like processes and structure and things like that. But I think over the years, innovation has shown itself in different ways from what I originally thought about. I think that would be, for me, over the last 2 years, has been really critical in terms of how do I flex and shift to be able to serve the various clients that I serve based on their individual needs.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, we've been relocating talent for 60 plus years. I've been in the industry for 25, and when we're moving someone, we would go out to the home and assess their needs and then help them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we have this virtual technology. So you talked about innovation. And so that's what we're using now, is we have this virtual technology that allows us to connect with the person in the home, hold their iPhone up and just take us around the home and show us everything they're moving, and we can help them. And what we've learned is it's been more of a convenience for the customer. Mm-hmm. And but I had to learn that. I had to. So, here I am thinking, okay, you're at the top of the mountain. No, you're just at the bottom of the next mountain.
Yes.
And I'll share that quote. I just read that. And what's interesting to me is, and you have the same perspective, and that is that it seems like people that live life in the leadership lane, they have that continuous learning mindset. They're just always like looking for ways to learn and be better as a leader. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that. And I think that's indicative of good leadership. But then I also think about how I am personally wired. One of my top strengths and strength finders is learner. So I
Ooh.
gravitate to that, and in the idea that it's not about being the expert in everything. It's really the journey of being exposed to learning new skills, just being better every day.
You know what? Now you're talking my language. I was actually thinking about when you said that my strength is learner. I was thinking about the book Brene Brown.
Yes.
We all know Brene Brown, incredible author and researcher, are just phenomenal. In her book Dare to Lead, she talks about everyone should know, like at the snap of your fingers, at least two of the values that drive your everyday. And one of those values for me is continuous improvement. And someone said, what do you mean by continuous improvement? And here's what I said. If I don't feel like I learned something that day, I feel sluggish. Almost like you went to bed real late and you woke up and you're just feeling sluggish. But man, when I get on a podcast, I learn. I learn from my guests. And when I get off, I am so energized, and it just drives my day. Do you get that too?
I do. I do. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm always looking at different opportunities, like, operations, HR,
Hmm.
like whatever it is, payroll,
Yeah.
what else is there that I can be involved in? And, I enjoy reading and, those types of things to try to supplement that desire for new knowledge.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, let me ask you this, and I want to pivot over here to volunteer leadership. You also are a volunteer leader, and you have been serving HR Southwest Conference for a while. This year, I believe you are a leader in educational sessions. Is that correct?
Actually, I've moved from the educational sessions to the attendee experience.
Tell me about that. That's what I
Yeah.
want to hear. What is the attendee experience all about? And what are you doing for HR Southwest Conference this year?
So that's a great question. The attendee experience is a new committee.
Okay.
So let me back up a little bit. I've served on the Ed Sessions Committee for the past 3 years,
Okay.
in a leadership role the past 2 years, and
Okay.
so it's been again right up my wheelhouse. Right, it's around education, it's learning, it's bringing the latest greatest information to the conference. So I love that part, but there's an opportunity to create a new committee called the Attendee Experience, which is a combination of a couple of the other committees prior
Okay.
that we had. And so it's really focusing on that experience of the attendees, whether it be the entertainment, the food. I think the bookstore is a part of that as well. And so it's going to be exciting because it's new.
I love that. And one of the so of course I published the book Life in the Leadership Lane to complement the podcast. And one of the chapters I call the 5-star experience.
Mhm.
And it's really made me reflect a lot lately. And the reason why is because we all have a chance to create a 5-star experience. When I think about 5-star experience, I think, hey, went to a good restaurant, let's give them a 5-star, right? Hey, we listened to the podcast, we're going to give them a 5-star. You can give Life in the Leadership Lane a 5-star if you'd like. But having that, and so we all have this opportunity. And I was thinking about, you just said, hey, it's about the entertainment, it's about the education, it's about the food. And I love how there's a focus on that. And I'm giving it in my presentation tomorrow. I'm going to talk about one of the things I'm going to talk about is a 5-star experience. And we can even give 5-star experiences through, you mentioned earlier, simple can sometimes be complex, but simple. So I like to keep it simple. And so one of the ways we can give a 5-star experience is starting a meeting on time and ending on time. right? And so there's lots of different ways to create those experiences, isn't there? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and you think about how the HR Southwest conference has evolved over the years by, it's very, I love, it's one of the best conferences that I attend annually, not just because I'm a part of it, but I, prior to that have attended other conferences, but things are changing. The pandemic caused us to shift and pivot over
Hmm.
the last 2 years. And now what does that look like going forward, right? What does that experience look like going forward for the conference attendees? And so that's the innovation piece of it. And we want to make sure that we're giving them that 5-star experience because people are investing time and money in this event. And, they've expected that over the years. And so we're hoping to continue that, even though we're shifting the way we may deliver that experience.
I will definitely put a link in the show notes for people that want to check out the HR Southwest Conference coming up this October. Hey, I want to ask you a final question in this area, and that is, I always like to ask, people that they've moved up in their role in their career, and obviously you've been a learner. I just love that. Uh, for those that are listening, and they're taking notes and they're thinking, yeah, I want to do that too. What's a way for someone to, I don't know, just skill up? Just maybe a tip you might give to our audience that, hey, you know what, if you're you're just starting out of college, or you're in your mid-career and you want to skill up, where's a place they could go to try to get a little bit better?
So obviously, I'm a fan of HR, and if you're in the Dallas area, I think Dallas HR is a great spot.
Yeah.
But there's also lots and lots of webinars that folks can attend. I think the most important thing, there's resources out there. I think the most important thing that I would say to someone is to be curious, right?
Mm,
There's lots of opportunities and networking, right? Because you find out ways that you can skill up that may not be in the traditional form of, a formal education or things like that, just by networking. And so those are the two things that I would say is network and be curious in terms of your own knowledge or the ability to gain something that you may not have already been exposed to.
I love that. The wise words: be curious and network. I love that so much. Hey, let me ask this: for what's a I'm just curious, being curious here. What's a typical day of Rhonda Clemente? Are you an early riser? Do you have a system that you like? Do you have a process for every day? Would you mind sharing?
Yeah.
Or is every day a different day in HR?
Yeah, that's gonna say. I was gonna say every day in HR is different. I think everyone who's in HR would agree with that. The best laid plans don't always go that way. But as far as for myself, I am very, I think I mentioned this early, kind of systematic, right? I like processes and systems, and
Yeah,
that actually helps me be able to manage the chaos, right? So
yeah.
if I have a system and process for most of what should happen, then I have the time, the flexibility and
Mm.
time to kind of manage those things that are not foreseen. But to answer your question, yes, I am a early riser. I've always been an early riser. I have no idea where that came from. But as I get older, I'm actually embracing it. In college, people kind of look at me crazy, like, what is she doing? But on the flip side of that, I go to bed pretty early too.
I'm with you on that. I'm an early riser. I'm an early to bed guy as well. And so, no, that's great. I want you to share that because I want listeners to hear that it really doesn't matter if you're an early riser or you work late, whatever that is, as long as you have a system. Because what you said was, when I have a system, it gives me options. It gives me margins in my day. And I think that's the main thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like plan for what you can plan for,
Yeah.
and then know that there's going to be stuff that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so good. Hey, do you still use do you write down in a planner or do you use your phone only or both?
Both.
Okay.
I
Both
would
too.
like to say that I'm all technology driven. I'm getting better, but there's still something just about jotting down notes.
So I had a conversation with my wife just the other day about this, and I was talking to her about I put everything in my phone, but on Saturdays when I get up, I do 30 minutes of planning, and I take everything that's in my phone and I write it in my planner because I have to see it. So I have both as well, and I don't know. I tried to go all digital a couple of times, and it just didn't work for me. I have to be both. So anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, let me ask you this before we go to it's time to accelerate. I have one question I do like to ask my guests, and I want to ask you, have you ever been given any advice that it was so good? It could have been from your family, it could have been from school, it could have been from your any part of your career. It was just so good. You just find yourself sharing that often with others.
What comes to mind for me is, and I'm thinking about how nervous I used to be with interacting with C-suite or executives. And I don't remember who shared this with me, but it stuck with me. And it was, the question was, why are you nervous? I think it might have been an executive coach I had at one time. Like, why are you nervous with, when interacting with these individuals? Because they put their pants on one leg at a time as well. And so, as simple as that sounds, it really is real, right? We're all human and we're all just trying to do the best that we can. And so, I think about that with some of my team members that are interacting with C-suites that are challenged that same way, like super knowledgeable, understand what they're doing, but there's something about, that title that, makes people freeze or uncomfortable or not show up in the best way that they can. And I've shared that with lots of people throughout my career is, what, they put their pants on one leg at a time too. And so, how do you show up in a room in a way that makes you feel worthy to be in that room as well?
Okay, I got to tell you, Rhonda, I have chills. That is so good, and I'm sure there's a lot of people resonating with that. I was thinking about, we all have some of that in us, but it just sometimes you look and you don't see it in the other person. You're like, how do
Mhm.
they're just so calm, cool, and collected, and I'm so nervous about this. Yeah, they may be too, but you're right. I had a guy tell me one time also. He said, it's just people doing business with people you
Mhm.
know and if you come with a message that you are serving them, you are helping them, it just feels different, right? It just and it's when the times that I probably were most nervous in my career was when I was thinking about me and
Mhm.
not necessarily thinking about them, and that's when it really changed for me. Do you have any recollections of that? Like, didn't I remember even going to Dallas HR and early on thinking about me, what am I gonna get out of this? How does it benefit me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then one day I started thinking, you know what, I need to serve here. I need to learn how I can help others. And that really flipped the switch for me.
You know what? I really like that. I hadn't thought about that, but I think you're right. If you show up in a room, and I'm with a company and asking questions and trying to get to what they need, right? Serving them, it
Yeah.
feels so much different than
Yeah.
espousing all the things that I know, right?
I'm with you. But having said that, if I show up a room with the president of the United States, I still may be a little nervous. That's fantastic. This has been so much fun. I told you the time's going to fly. I've got our last part of the show is called It's Time to Accelerate. I'm going to just ask you a few questions. First question I want to ask you, Rhonda, is would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast?
Both. That's kind of hard to say. It kind of depends on the environment. But if I had to select one, I'd probably say podcast just because of time and technology.
Yeah. Yeah. You can walk down and have a walk and listen to a podcast. No, I'm with you. Hey, let me ask you this question. And I know that you work hard. I mean, people that are in your position, they put in the work, but outside of work, what energizes you?
Probably like most people, I love being around my family, right?
Mhm.
That's energy
Yep.
for me. And I also like the outdoors. So
Mm.
growing up in Colorado, I was very active and involved in lots of sports. And so just being outside, whether it's, hiking or walking, or I've got some great nephews that are in sports now. So I enjoy that kind of environment. And then recently, I actually just started taking Pilates over the pandemic, just as a way to kind of de-stress and focus. And so, as much as it's calming, it's actually energizing for me to have a good Pilates routine in the morning for the rest of the day.
I love that. I love that. Another silver lining for the last couple of years. Hey, this is my last question, Rhonda, and this is probably one of my favorite questions. And so Rhonda, 10 years older, is around the corner knocking on your door, and you're going to go answer that door. What's she going to say to you?
Um, she's gonna say, I'm glad you tried.
Mm.
So my desire to not have any regrets is strong, right? So just
Mm.
try, right? So hopefully she says, I'm glad you tried, and that you don't have any regrets. And then the other thing that I would say is she's probably going to say, you probably should have saved more money earlier in your career.
That is so great. Oh my goodness. I think Diane Sanford was on the show, and she also said, save more money. I love that. Oh man, I think mine would say the same thing. Listen, you are definitely driving in the leadership lane. Congratulations on your being recipient. You are an HR star, executive of the year. I can definitely see why. And so, hey, for those who heard something today, and they're like, you know what, I want to connect with Rhonda. How would be the best way for them to connect?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So that's probably the best way. And it's simple. It's Rhonda.Clemente. So search me out, and Insperity. You'll see my picture. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with anyone who would love to have any conversations.
Or want to have a conversation about the attendee or the conference experience. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Hey, I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, your perspective. This has been so good. I cannot wait to share this. And I just appreciate all that you do for Dallas HR, for HR Southwest, the HR community, and mostly appreciate your friendship.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Yeah, I can't wait to share. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.